This can't be happening. Richard Sterling's voice cracked as his $50,000 charity gala fell dead silent. The woman he'd invited to publicly humiliate was standing in the center of his ballroom, but she wasn't the helpless maid he thought he knew. She was holding something that made his blood turn to ice. 7 days earlier, Richard Sterling had been sitting in his marble-walled penthouse office on the 54th floor of Sterling Enterprises, Manhattan's third tallest corporate tower. Through floor-to-ceiling windows, he could see the sprawling metropolis that had made him one of America's youngest billionaires at 38. His pharmaceutical empire controlled medications that kept millions alive, but Richard saw people only as profit margins and market demographics. The office itself was a monument to excess Italian marble floors, handcrafted mahogany furniture, and original Renaissance paintings worth more than small countries' GDP. A crystal decanter of 30-year-old Macallan sat on his desk, next to platinum-framed photos of Richard shaking hands with presidents, tech moguls, and foreign dignitaries. Every surface gleamed with the obsessive attention of the cleaning staff he barely acknowledged as human. Richard's daily routine involved making decisions that affected millions of lives while treating the people who served him like animated furniture. His morning coffee was prepared by Isabella, whom he called the coffee girl, despite her having worked there for 6 years. His lunch was delivered by Marcus, whose name Richard had never bothered to learn. And every evening, long after the executives had gone home, Maria Santos would arrive to clean the evidence of his day, emptying trash bins full of shredded documents, wiping down surfaces where deals worth billions had been negotiated, and maintaining the pristine environment from which he orchestrated both miracles and murders. What Richard never considered was that invisible people see everything, every document left carelessly on his desk, every phone conversation conducted while they worked silently in the background, every moment when powerful men believe no one important is listening. For 3 years, Maria Santos had been collecting these moments like puzzle pieces, waiting for the day she would finally assemble them into a picture that would destroy everything he had built on the bones of innocent people. "Patricia," he called to his wife, who was selecting jewelry from her walk-in vault. "I've had the most delicious idea for Saturday's charity gala." Patricia Sterling, daughter of a pharmaceutical dynasty worth $2.3 billion, emerged wearing a diamond choker that cost more than most people earned in 5 years. At 35, she had the cold beauty of someone who had never questioned whether she deserved everything handed to her. "Oh, darling, tell me," she purred, fastening matching diamond earrings. "You know how I adore your little social experiments?" Richard swirled his $500 brandy and smiled with the cruelty of a predator who had never encountered actual danger. "What if we invited Maria Santos to the gala?" Patricia paused, her perfectly manicured hand frozen mid-reach for her necklace. "Maria Santos? You mean our cleaning woman?" "Richard, that's deliciously wicked, even for you." "Think about it," Richard continued, warming to his theme. 200 of New York's most powerful people, everyone who matters in politics, finance, and society. And there, in the middle of it all, our little Puerto Rican maid trying to pretend she belongs. Patricia's laughter tinkled like expensive crystal. "The photographs alone would be priceless. Can you imagine her trying to navigate a formal dinner? The poor thing probably doesn't even know which fork to use." "We'll seat her at the head table," Richard added, his eyes gleaming with malicious anticipation, right between Senator Whitmore's wife and the pharmaceutical heiress Vivian Cross. "They'll eat her alive with surgical precision." Patricia clapped her hands with genuine delight. "You're absolutely terrible, and I love it. When should we deliver the invitation?" "Tomorrow. I want to give her just enough time to panic about what to wear and how to act. The anticipation will make her humiliation even more complete." What Richard Sterling didn't know was that Maria Santos had been waiting 3 years for exactly this moment. 3 years of cleaning his office, emptying his trash, and listening to conversations he thought no one important could hear. 3 years of being invisible while gathering the evidence that would destroy him. Maria Santos was scrubbing the marble floors of Richard's private bathroom when Patricia Sterling approached with an elegant gold envelope. At 28, Maria moved with the efficiency of someone who had learned to work quickly and invisibly, her dark hair always pulled back in a practical ponytail, her clothes deliberately unremarkable. "Maria," Patricia said in the patronizing tone she used with service staff, "Mr. Sterling wanted me to give you this personally." Maria looked up from her scrubbing, her dark eyes betraying nothing of the intelligence that analyzed every word, every gesture, every telling detail of the Sterling family's private life. Yes, ma'am? Patricia held out the invitation with the theatrical flourish of someone bestowing great favor. It's an invitation to our charity gala this Saturday. The theme is giving back to those in need, and Richard thought it would be educational for you to see how real philanthropy works. Maria wiped her hands on her uniform and accepted the envelope with appropriate humility. That's very generous, Mrs. Sterling. I'm not sure I have anything appropriate to wear to such an event. Oh, I'm sure you'll find something suitable, Patricia replied, her smile sharp enough to cut glass. The dress code is black tie formal, but I'm certain you'll manage. After all, it's the thought that counts, isn't it? As Patricia's heels clicked away across the marble, Maria opened the invitation with steady hands. The gold-embossed card announced the annual Sterling Foundation Charity Gala at the Grand Plaza Hotel, Manhattan's most exclusive venue. Ticket price, $10,000 per person. Dress code, maximum elegance. Maria smiled, but not with the gratitude the Sterlings expected. She smiled because after 3 years of careful planning, Richard Sterling had just handed her the perfect stage for justice. That evening, in her modest Brooklyn apartment, Maria Santos removed a key from behind a loose brick in her bedroom wall. The key opened a safety deposit box at First National Bank where she had stored items she hadn't touched in 4 years. Items that told the story of who she really was before tragedy had forced her to become invisible. The first item was a photograph. Maria at her Harvard Law School graduation, summa cum laude, surrounded by professors who had predicted a brilliant career in corporate law. The second was her diploma from Harvard Business School, where she had graduated first in her class with specializations in mergers, acquisitions, and corporate ethics. The third item was a newspaper clipping with a headline that had changed everything. Rising star attorney Maria Vasquez dies in suspicious car accident. The article described how corporate lawyer Maria Vasquez, who had been investigating pharmaceutical fraud for the Department of Justice, had died when her car went off a bridge during a thunderstorm. Her body was never recovered. Except Maria Vasquez hadn't died. She had survived the crash, been pulled from the river by a homeless veteran, and spent 6 months in a coma with no identification. When she woke up, she discovered that the pharmaceutical executives she had been investigating had been cleared of all charges due to lack of evidence. Her files had disappeared, her witnesses had recanted, and her replacement had closed the case. Maria had realized that Maria Vasquez, corporate attorney, was dead. But Maria Santos, invisible cleaning woman, could go places and hear conversations that no lawyer ever could. She had spent 2 years researching the Sterling family before applying for a job at their company. Not because she needed work, but because she needed access. The fourth item in the safety deposit box was a will. Her grandfather's will, specifically Eduardo Vasquez, who had built a pharmaceutical empire in Puerto Rico before selling it to Sterling Enterprises in 1987. The same will that left everything to his granddaughter, Maria Elena Vasquez, with one important stipulation. She could only claim her inheritance after proving that Sterling Enterprises was operating ethically. Eduardo Vasquez had known exactly what kind of company he was selling to, and he had built a trap that would take decades to spring. The next 3 days passed in careful preparation. Maria withdrew $50,000 from her private account money she had saved from her previous career and invested wisely over the years. She made appointments at Manhattan's most exclusive establishments: hair, makeup, personal shopping, and a private consultation with the fashion director at Bergdorf Goodman. I need to look like someone who belongs at the Sterling Foundation Gala, she told the fashion consultant, a sharp-eyed woman named Claire, who had dressed politicians' wives and pharmaceutical heiresses. Honey, Claire said, studying Maria's bone structure and natural elegance, give me 3 hours and you'll look like you own the Sterling Foundation. While Maria prepared her appearance, she also finalized other arrangements. She confirmed appointments with District Attorney Sarah Chen, investigative journalist Marcus Williams, and FBI Special Agent David Rodriguez. Each had received packages of evidence over the past year, documents, recordings, and photographs that painted a comprehensive picture of Sterling Enterprises' criminal activities. The trap had been set for 3 years. Saturday night, it would finally close. The Grand Plaza Hotel buzzed with the energy of Manhattan's elite gathering for their annual ritual of charity and self-congratulation. Rolls-Royces and Bentleys lined Fifth Avenue as pharmaceutical executives, tech billionaires, real estate moguls, and political dynasties converged on the marble-columned entrance. Richard Sterling stood near the ballroom entrance, resplendent in his $15,000 custom Armani tuxedo, greeting guests with the warm insincerity of someone who had never met a person he couldn't use. Patricia glittered beside him in a $300,000 gown encrusted with diamonds, her smile as cold and perfect as her jewelry. "Richard, darling," cooed Senator Catherine Whitmore's wife, "Patricia told me you've invited someone special tonight. Someone from the working class?" Richard's smile widened with anticipation. "Our cleaning lady, actually. I thought it would be educational for our community to see how the other half lives. And perhaps educational for her to see how real success looks." Vivian Cross, heiress to a media empire, laughed musically. "How wonderfully progressive of you. Though I do hope she won't be too uncomfortable. These events can be overwhelming for people who aren't accustomed to refinement." "Oh, I'm counting on it," Richard replied, his eyes gleaming with malicious pleasure. Sometimes the best charity is a lesson in knowing one's place. At exactly 8 o'clock, as the cocktail hour reached its peak, the ballroom's grand doors opened with theatrical timing. Every conversation stopped. Every head turned, every phone camera activated. But instead of the embarrassed, poorly dressed woman they expected, Maria Santos entered like she was walking the red carpet at the Met Gala. The dress was vibrant hot pink, cut from Italian silk that caught the crystal chandelier light and threw it back like liquid starlight. It hugged her curves with mathematical precision, the neckline elegant but authoritative, the hem falling to exactly the right length to showcase diamond-encrusted heels. That cost more than most people's monthly salary. But it wasn't the dress that silenced the room. It was the way Maria moved with the fluid confidence of someone who had walked through ballrooms like this 1,000 times before. Her dark hair was styled in an elegant chignon that showcased diamond earrings catching every flash from the photographers. Her makeup was flawless but understated, emphasizing natural beauty rather than masking it. Most shocking of all was her posture. The straight spine of someone accustomed to command. The steady gaze of someone who had never learned to look down. The slight smile of someone who knew secrets that could change everything. "Jesus Christ," whispered pharmaceutical executive James Morrison to his wife. "That's not a cleaning lady, that's a goddess," his wife finished, staring in open admiration. "She looks like she should be on magazine covers." Richard's confident smile began to falter as Maria approached the group of billionaires with the purposeful stride of a predator who had finally cornered her prey. This wasn't the submissive woman who had cleaned his office in silence for 3 years. This was someone else entirely. "Richard," Maria said, her voice carrying the authority of someone accustomed to being heard. "Thank you so much for the invitation. Though I must say, your definition of charity is fascinating." The way she said his name without the deferential Mr. Sterling she had used for 3 years sent ripples of shock through the gathered elite. There was an intimacy there, a familiarity that belonged between equals, not between employer and employee. "Maria," Richard replied, his voice slightly strained as he tried to regain control of the situation. "What a pleasant surprise. I wasn't entirely certain you would actually come. This must be quite overwhelming for someone who doesn't normally participate in events of this caliber." Maria's smile deepened, but there was something dangerous in the expression. "Overwhelming?" "No, Richard. I feel exactly like I'm where I've always belonged." Patricia Sterling stepped forward, her social antenna detecting the shift in power dynamics. "Maria dear, what an absolutely stunning dress. It has such character, vintage perhaps. Where did you find something so unique?" "This dress," Maria replied, running her fingers along the silk with reverence, "belonged to my grandmother. She wore it to galas just like this one. That was 30 years ago, when she was still Elena Vasquez Sterling." The name detonated through the crowd like a social bomb. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. Champagne glasses froze halfway to lips. Senator Whitmore's wife actually took a step backward. "Vasquez Sterling?" whispered Vivian Cross, her face pale beneath her expertly applied makeup. "That's impossible. The Sterling family doesn't have any Hispanic branches?" Maria finished with deadly quiet. "How fascinating that you would assume that, Vivian. Tell me, what exactly do you know about the Sterling family history?" Richard's hands were visibly trembling as he gripped his champagne flute. His face had gone from ruddy confidence to ashen fear in the space of 30 seconds. "You're delusional," he said, but his voice lacked any conviction. I don't know what game you're playing, but it stops now. Maria reached into her small evening purse and withdrew something that made the entire ballroom gasp collectively. It was a ring, but not just any ring. It was unmistakably the Sterling family signet ring, 18-karat gold with the distinctive family crest featuring twin lions and a crown. The ring that had been passed down through 7 generations of Sterling men. This ring, Maria said, holding it up so every camera could capture it clearly, was given to my grandmother by her husband, your grandfather Richard. My great-grandfather, Eduardo Vasquez Sterling. The silence was so complete that the sound of Patricia's champagne glass hitting the marble floor echoed like a gunshot. Richard staggered backward as if he had been physically struck. That's impossible. My grandfather would never… He didn't have any Puerto Rican family? Maria's voice carried across the ballroom with crystalline clarity. Any branches of the family tree that didn't fit the pristine white image you've cultivated? Any relatives who might have legitimate claims to the empire he built? Vivian Cross pulled out her phone with shaking hands. I'm calling security. This woman is clearly having some kind of psychotic episode. By all means, Maria said with perfect calm. Call them. But while you're at it, you might want to call FBI Special Agent David Rodriguez. He's been waiting 3 years to hear this testimony. Testimony about what? Richard's voice came out as a croak. Maria looked directly at him, and for the first time in 3 years, she allowed him to see exactly who she really was. About how you murdered my father. The ballroom erupted in shock, but Maria raised her hand with the authority of someone accustomed to commanding attention. Please, everyone stay. You came here for charity tonight, and you're about to witness the greatest act of justice this city has seen in decades. She nodded toward the ballroom entrance, where 3 figures had been waiting for this exact moment. District Attorney Sarah Chun entered carrying a briefcase full of evidence. Investigative journalist Marcus Williams followed with digital recording equipment. The third person made Richard Sterling look like he was seeing a ghost. Dr. Robert Harrison, Maria announced to the crowd. The physician who treated my father during his final illness. Dr. Harrison, would you please tell these good people how Carlos Vasquez really died? Dr. Harrison stepped forward, his face grave with the weight of 3 years of silence. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm here tonight because my conscience can no longer bear what I've kept hidden. Carlos Vasquez did not die of natural causes, as the death certificate states. He was systematically poisoned with digitalis over a period of 8 months. The crowd's murmur turned to gasps of horror. Several people began moving toward the exits, but FBI agents had quietly positioned themselves at every door. Dr. Harrison continued, his voice steady despite the magnitude of his revelation. The doses were carefully calibrated to mimic heart failure, a condition Mr. Vasquez didn't have. I was threatened into signing a false death certificate and keeping silent about the murder. District Attorney Chun opened her briefcase and began distributing copies of medical records to the journalists present. We have toxicology reports that were suppressed, financial documents showing unusual pharmaceutical purchases made by Richard Sterling during his father's illness, and recorded conversations detailing the murder plot. This is insane, Richard finally managed to say, but his voice was completely uncontrolled. You can't prove any of this. It's been 3 years. There's no evidence. Maria smiled, and this time the predatory nature of the expression was unmistakable. Richard, you've always underestimated people you consider beneath you. Did you really think I spent 3 years cleaning your office just to earn $12 an hour? Marcus Williams activated his digital recording system, connecting it to the ballroom's sound system. Richard's voice filled the room, crystal clear and unmistakably his own. Harrison, you listen to me very carefully. The old spick is starting to ask too many questions about the family business. He wants to see financial records, ownership documents, the works. We can't let him dig into that. The recording continued with devastating clarity. I need you to handle this medically. Make it look natural heart problems. Maybe a stroke. Something his age and ethnic background would make believable. Use the digitalis from the pharmaceutical samples I'm sending you. Dr. Harrison's recorded voice responded, Richard, I can't do this. It's murder. Richard's voice turned threatening. You can and you will. Remember that medical license you're so proud of? Remember your reputation? Your family's security? Do this or lose everything. When the recording ended, the silence in the ballroom was absolute. Several people were openly staring in horror. Others were quietly making their way toward exits. only to find FBI agents checking identifications and requesting that everyone remain for questioning. Patricia Sterling had backed away from her husband as if he were radioactive. "Richard," she whispered, "you actually killed her father?" "My father," Maria corrected gently, "was Carlos Eduardo Vasquez. He was a pharmaceutical researcher who discovered that Sterling Enterprises was diluting cancer medications to increase profits. When he threatened to expose the scheme, Richard decided it would be easier to kill him than face justice." District Attorney Chen stepped forward with another folder. "We also have evidence that Richard Sterling has been systematically murdering anyone who threatened to expose Sterling Enterprises' crimes. 5 deaths over 7 years, all made to look like natural causes or accidents. Richard tried one last desperate gambit. Even if any of this were true, which it isn't, what could a cleaning lady possibly do about it?" Maria's smile widened, and she allowed her true intelligence to shine through for the first time in 3 years. "Oh, Richard, did you really think Maria Santos was my real name?" She walked to the center of the ballroom, every eye following her movement. "My name is Dr. Maria Elena Vasquez. I graduated summa cum laude from Harvard Law School and first in my class from Harvard Business School. Before I became your cleaning lady, I was the lead prosecutor for the Department of Justice's Pharmaceutical Fraud Division." The revelation hit the crowd like a physical blow. Phones were recording frantically now, but for completely different reasons than Richard had anticipated. 4 years ago, I was investigating Sterling Enterprises for Medicare fraud when my car went off a bridge. The official report said I died, but I survived. While I was recovering, I watched Richard's lawyers systematically destroy my case, intimidate my witnesses, and bury the evidence. Maria paused, looking around the room at faces that had gone from amused superiority to horrified fascination. Maria Vasquez, the prosecutor, was dead, but Maria Santos, the invisible cleaning woman, could go places and hear conversations that no lawyer ever could. I spent 2 years documenting everything, every crime, every payoff, every murder, before applying for a job cleaning the offices of the man who killed my father. Richard was now visibly desperate, sweating through his expensive tuxedo. "You're insane. No one will believe any of this." District Attorney Chen smiled for the first time that evening. "Actually, Mr. Sterling, we have corroborating evidence from 47 different sources. Bank records, pharmacy logs, recorded conversations, video surveillance, and testimony from 12 witnesses who were afraid to come forward until now." She gestured toward the ballroom entrance, where more FBI agents were escorting in a line of people. "Your former accountant, your pharmaceutical supplier, your private physician, 3 former employees who were threatened into silence, and several family members of your victims who have been waiting years for justice." As handcuffs clicked around Richard's wrists, Maria felt something she hadn't experienced in 4 years: complete peace. Not satisfaction, that would come later. Not revenge, this was justice. Just the quiet peace that comes when truth finally surfaces after being buried under lies. "Maria," Patricia Sterling approached her as police led her husband away. I had no idea." "If I had known..." "You would have what, Patricia?" Maria's voice was gentle but unflinching. "You would have treated me with basic human dignity instead of laughing when your husband called me the help? You would have questioned why a billionaire felt the need to humiliate someone he considered beneath him?" Patricia had no answer. Marcus Williams approached with his recorder. "Dr. Vasquez, what happens now?" Maria looked around the ballroom at 200 of the most powerful people in America, all of whom had spent the evening expecting to watch her humiliation. "Now, Mr. Williams, Sterling Enterprises will be restructured under new management that prioritizes healing people over profiting from their suffering." She paused, looking directly into the cameras. "And every person who works in service industries, the people who cleaned this hotel tonight, who served your food, who made this evening possible while you planned to mock one of their own, they're all getting raises. Effective immediately." The applause that followed wasn't the polite charity gala clapping she had heard for 3 years. It was genuine, from hotel staff and security personnel who had been invisible until that moment. Dr. Maria Elena Vasquez sat in what had once been Richard Sterling's office, now completely transformed. The walls that had displayed trophies of corporate greed now featured photographs of patients whose lives had been saved by affordable medications, community health programs, and medical research grants. Sterling Enterprises had become the first major pharmaceutical company to sell medications at cost to developing nations. The staff that Maria had once worked alongside as a cleaning woman now earned living wages with full benefits and opportunities for advancement. Richard Sterling had been sentenced to life in prison without possibility of parole on 5 counts of first-degree murder and 37 counts of fraud, conspiracy, and racketeering. The evidence Maria had gathered over 3 years revealed a criminal enterprise that had caused thousands of deaths through diluted medications and covered up countless crimes through murder and intimidation. Patricia Sterling had cooperated fully with authorities and received a reduced sentence of 10 years in minimum security prison. Her children, who had attended private schools and Ivy League universities on blood money, now worked in social services, determined to make amends for their family's crimes. But Maria's greatest pride wasn't in the corporate transformation or the criminal convictions. It was in the letter she received from a young woman named Isabella, a hotel housekeeper who had been working the Sterling Foundation Gala that night. "Dr. Vasquez, I want you to know that watching you stand up to those people changed my life forever. You showed me that being underestimated isn't a weakness, it's a strategic advantage. I enrolled in community college the week after the gala, and I've just been accepted to medical school. Thank you for proving that justice doesn't always come from above. Sometimes it rises from below, and when it does, nothing can stop it." On quiet evenings, Maria would sit in her father's favorite chair and look out at the Manhattan skyline, thinking about the man whose murder had set her on this path. Carlos Vasquez had been a brilliant researcher who had discovered that diluted cancer medications were killing children. His only crime had been believing that saving lives was more important than protecting profits. Richard Sterling had killed him for that belief. But in doing so, he had created something far more dangerous than a grieving daughter. He had created a force of justice that would spend years in patient preparation before striking with unstoppable precision. Maria had learned that true power isn't inherited or stolen, it's earned through the choices you make when no one is watching, the dignity you maintain when everyone is mocking, and the courage you find when justice depends entirely on your willingness to sacrifice everything to achieve it. The cleaning lady had become the CEO, not through luck or charity, but through 4 years of meticulous planning, flawless execution, and an unshakable belief that truth, once armed with evidence, is the most powerful force in the world. Richard Sterling had invited her to be humiliated in front of New York's elite. Instead, he had provided her with the perfect stage for justice. And Dr. Maria Elena Vasquez had given a performance that would be remembered long after his name was forgotten in the annals of criminal history. If this story of justice, courage, and the danger of underestimating someone based on their circumstances touched your heart, remember that sometimes the most dangerous person in any room is the one everyone has chosen to ignore. They're not weak, they're just waiting for the perfect moment to show the world exactly who they really are. And when that moment comes, justice served cold is often the most satisfying justice of all.